Hey folks, this is Will from Card Swarm. Today we're going to be opening up Chaos Incarnate and checking out this starter commander deck and seeing what's inside. I'm just going to go through all the cards in this and see what's what. Open on the bottom here. Get this out of the way. All right. So here we've got, let's see, this is the deck box that it comes with, little paper deck box. Close that up. Okay, here's our deck. We'll leave that sealed for a second. It also comes with this insert, because these decks specifically are called starter commander decks. So these are meant for players that are somewhat new to Commander or maybe even new to Magic. So we have a brief layout of the Commander rules here, but also kind of a short breakdown of actually playing the deck. And then this nice art of Carter on the back side and a little bit of flavor text about him. So we'll set that aside. And let's open this up and talk about I can never find the part on these where you're supposed to open it. I'm just gonna open it from the bottom. Okay, let's get rid of that. All right, so Carter Doomscourge is a legendary creature demon berserker. He costs 2, a black and a red, and his abilities say when Carter Doomscourge enters the battlefield, until your next turn, creatures your opponents control attack each combat if able, and attack a player other than you if able. We have a second ability. Whenever an attacking creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So the first ability seems pretty similar to Goad, but it's actually a bit better in some ways because Goad targets creatures, whereas Carter specifically targets opponents. So as long as a creature has, let's say, haste or can attack the turn it comes out, the turn after you play Carter can be affecting creatures that weren't on the battlefield when Carter entered the battlefield, because it just refers to creatures your opponents control. It doesn't necessarily target any particular creature. The second ability obviously works pretty well with the first one. If you're getting all your opponents to attack each other, we're gonna have a lot of creatures dying, and as long as Carter's out here, all that creature death equates to your opponents losing 1 life, and thankfully it's each opponent, right, instead of just the opponent who controlled the creature, so the damage is pretty symmetrical across the board for your opponents, but you're also getting this benefit of gaining a life. So there's a lot of potential avenues to take this guy, but I think generally what we're trying to do is just disrupt our opponent's game plan, right? Your opponents might be trying to bring out creatures to attack others, attack you, build up a strong board state, and Carter just makes all of that a lot trickier, right? He's forcing them to attack when they may not want to, and making them make some difficult decisions. So we got Archfiend of Depravity here. Archfiend's a really solid beater. It's a 5/4. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, that player chooses up to 2 creatures they control and then sacrifices the rest. This works really well with Carter because we are, well, actually this doesn't really synergize with the attacking creature thing, but Archfiend is maybe more useful later in the game once you've cleared the board with Carter. You can bring Archfiend out to keep the board clean, so you can attack the maybe 1 or 2 remaining opponents after Carter's ability has helped deal with at least 1 person. Same thing with Bloodgift Demon. It's a 5/4, another flyer. At the beginning of your upkeep, target player draws a card and loses 1 life. It can be useful. Deadly Tempest is a sorcery that destroys all creatures. Each player loses life equal to the number of creatures they control that were destroyed this way. This is kind of a like sideways card here because I can see this being useful if the Carter game plan doesn't work out, or if Carter keeps getting targeted and bounced away, Deadly Tempest is a great way to reset the game and deal some damage to your opponents in the meantime. Dredge the Mire is another sorcery that causes each opponent to choose a creature card in their graveyard and then put those cards on the battlefield under your control. Very effective later in the game. If a lot of creatures have died because of Deadly Tempest or Carter or Archfiend of Depravity, there's creatures in graveyards. Dredge the Mire is going to be able to potentially win you the game and just load up your board with a bunch of powerful creatures. We have Obnixilis Reignited, the Planeswalker. His +1 is to draw a card and lose a life. His -3 is to destroy target creature. And his -8 is to give an emblem to your opponent, which says, whenever a player draws a card, you lose 2 life. That's pretty deadly considering how big card draw is in games of Commander, potentially. Profane Command is a classic card. We have like multiple modes here that could be useful. Making a player lose life, returning creature cards from the graveyard, giving creatures -X/-X, or giving creatures fear. And with Profane Command, you can choose 2. Obviously, there's an X cost, so that's going to factor in. Rakshasa Debaser is a cat demon, a 6/6. Whenever it attacks, you can put a creature card from the defending player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Again, you should always have targets for Rakshasa because of how effective this deck is at causing creatures to die, whether it's by their own hand or through removal. Reign of the Pit is another sorcery. Each player sacrifices a creature and then create an XX black demon creature token with flying, where X is the total power of the creature sacrificed this way. So this could potentially be very good if you've still got 4 players at the table. Get that X cost pretty high. Sangromancer is a 3/3 with flying. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you can gain 3 life, and whenever an opponent discards a card, you can gain 3 life. Synchro is great to have out with Carter, right? I mean, if you're already trying to gain an advantage, forcing your opponents to attack each other, this just happens whenever a creature dies, you gain 3 life. So you can potentially set yourself pretty far ahead in terms of life gain. Scythe Spectre is a 4/4 flyer. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, each opponent discards a card, and each player who discarded a card with the highest mana value among cards discarded this way loses a life equal to that mana value. So this is going to punish one player in particular pretty badly. Sepulchral Primordial is a 5/4 with Intimidate, and when it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, you may put up to 1 target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So, like Debaser, this is another way of getting those dead creatures back out into play, but on your side of the field. Soul Shatter forces each of your opponents to sacrifice a creature or planeswalker with the highest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. Titan Hunter is a 4/5. At the beginning of each player's end step, if no creatures died this turn, it deals 4 damage to that player. So if you have some potential board state where you are trying to destroy creatures, but something is protecting them, there's some effect that's preventing combat damage or shielding creatures, Titan Hunter could be very useful there in a pinch, because it's still going to deal damage to players who are not having their creatures die. Blasphemous Act, expensive spell, but costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield, and it deals 13 damage to each creature. Another great way to load up graveyards. Brash Taunter is a 1/1 indestructible goblin, and whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent. You can also pay 2 in a red and tap him to have him fight another creature. Some pretty fun synergies there, potentially. Chaos Warp, which I'm a little surprised there aren't more Chaos cards in the deck, seeing as it's called Chaos Incarnate, but Chaos Warp is a really fun card. It's an instant that says the owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library and then reveals the top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it onto the battlefield. So some pretty cheap removal of anything on the battlefield, but could come at a cost. You never know what that permanent is going to be, if it is a permanent. Combustible Gearhawk is a 6/6 construct with first strike. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent may have you draw 3 cards. If the player doesn't, you mill 3 cards, and then Combustible Gearhawk deals damage to that player equal to the total mana value of those cards. So, forcing your opponent to make a tough choice here. Kind of not exactly synergistic with Carter, but it's of a similar flavor, right? We're forcing our opponents to make difficult choices where we can benefit to some degree regardless of the outcome. Dictate of the Twin Gods is an enchantment with flash. If a source would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. So this is an effect that's going to apply to everyone. So this is a pretty dangerous card. Fiery Confluence. This is another modal card where you can choose 3 and choose the same mode more than once. You can have it deal 1 damage to a creature, or excuse me, each creature, 2 damage to each opponent, or destroy a target artifact. You get to choose 3 here, so also could be pretty useful for dealing with a variety of threats. Geode Rager is a first strike, 4/3, with a landfall ability. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, goad each creature target player controls. So this is kind of overlapping a little bit with Carter, but this is goad. This is, a little bit more limited than Carter's ability. Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs, is an Ogre Warrior, a 5/4. Whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, if you're the defending player, create a 3/3 red Ogre creature token, unless that creature's controller pays 3. This is potentially very useful with Carter. If you have this out with Carter, every time Carter's forcing something to attack, well, actually, no, this wouldn't work with Carter, excuse me, sorry, because they wouldn't be attacking you. So it's a little bit of a non-combo with Carter, because you want to be the defending player here. So Kazul could also be useful just for preventing other players from attacking you because they're disincentivized, right? They don't want to keep giving you an endless supply of 3/3 Ogre tokens, or paying 3. Magmatic Force is a 7/7 elemental that says at the beginning of each upkeep, it deals 3 damage to any target. Sunbird's Invocation is an enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is that spell's mana value. You may cast a spell with mana value X or less from among cards revealed this way without paying their mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. That feels a little chaotic as well, so that's kind of on theme. Tectonic Giant's 3/4 elemental giant. Whenever he attacks or becomes the target of a spell, we can have him deal 3 damage to each opponent or exile the top 2 cards of our library and be able to play that until next turn. Wild Ricochet lets you choose new targets for an instant or sorcery spell and then copy it. That's an instant. Wildfire Devils is a 4/2 devil. When it enters the battlefield and at the beginning of your upkeep, you can choose a player at random. That player exiles an instant or sorcery card from their graveyard. You can copy it, and you can cast the copy without paying its mana cost. Karavek the Merciless is a legendary creature, human, shaman. It's a 5/4. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, Karavek the Merciless deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to any target. Pretty expensive cost, but very damaging effect. Spiteful Visions is an enchantment that says at the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. Whenever a player draws a card, it deals 1 damage to that player. Noticing a pattern with some of these enchantments now. Stormfist Crusader is a 2/2 knight, human knight, menace. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card and loses 1 life. Theater of Horrors is an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. During your turn, if an opponent lost life this turn, you may play lands and cast spells from among cards exiled with Theater of Horrors. And then you can pay 3 and a red to have it deal 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. Coveted Jewel is an artifact. Allows you to draw 3 cards when it enters the battlefield, and you can tap it to add 3 mana of any color. This is not exactly ramp because it costs 6 mana, but it could definitely be useful later on. Solemn Simulacrum, really good for finding your basic lands. We've got Foreboding Ruins, Smoldering Marsh, Stensia Bloodhall, Temple of Malice. Back to our sorceries, we have Feed the Swarm. Destroy target creature or enchantment opponent controls and lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. So removal there. Sorcery, draw 3 cards and lose 3 life. It's Ambition's cost. Indulgent Tormentor is a 5/3 demon with flying. Read the Bones is a sorcery that lets you draw cards and lose life. Sign in Blood, another sorcery, drawing cards, losing life. Siphon Mind is a sorcery that forces players to discard a card, and then you draw a card for each card discarded this way. Vampire Nighthawk is a 2/3 vampire shaman with flying, death touch, and lifelink. Abrade is a modal instant. Choose 1 to have it deal 3 damage to target creature or destroy an artifact. Explosion of Riches is a sorcery that allows you to draw a card, and then each other player may draw a card. Whenever a card is drawn this way, it deals 5 damage to target opponent, chosen at random from among your opponents. More chaos. Gutter Snipe is a 2/2 Goblin Shaman. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. Hate Mirage. Choose up to 2 target creatures you don't control. For each of those creatures, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Those tokens gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. Mana Geyser is another sorcery that adds mana for tapped lands your opponents control. Thermo Alchemist also allows you to deal damage based on instants and sorceries. Deals 1 damage to each opponent when you tap it, and then you can untap it when you cast an instant or sorcery. Breath of Malfegor is an instant that deals 5 damage to each opponent. Rakdos Charm, classic, another modal instant. You can choose to exile target player's graveyard, destroy an artifact, or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. Terminate is an instant removal spell, destroy target creature, it can't be regenerated. Unlicensed Disintegration is another instant that destroys target creature, but if you control an artifact, it deals 3 damage to that creature's controller, in addition to blowing up the creature. We've got Arcane Signet, Burnished Heart, Commander Sphere, Lightning Greaves, Nile Spellbomb, Rakdos Signet, obviously a Soul Ring, the Talisman of Indulgence. This is actually a very useful card. Wayfarer's Bauble, Worn Power Stone, Akum Refuge, Bloodfell Caves, Cinder Barrens, the Command Tower, Molten Slag Heap, Myriad Landscape, Urborg Volcano, and then let's see, I believe these are the basic lands. There should be 40 of these in here. So, yep, here's our basic lands. This is a pretty high mana curve deck, so we're starting us off with 40 lands. And then we've got our tokens. Ogres, demons, we have our Obnixilis emblem, which is very nice of them. Demons, zombies. So that is Chaos Incarnate, the Commander Precon, the starter Commander deck. So if you are sitting down with some new people to the game, or you are new to the game yourself, this is a pretty solid deck to pick up. Give it a try. You are going to be creating quite a bit of chaos at your table and disrupting the game plan of all your opponents, and hopefully that works out for you. So thanks for watching. Again, this is Will with Card Swarm.